Hello everyone, before the start of the video, I would like to request you all to subscribe. That's it. Thank you and enjoy. 26. Don't think that a light word like genius can summarize everything about me. Chapter 26. Don't think that a light word like genius can summarize everything about me. Fool. A faint hum was exceptionally clear in the silence. Inside the empty dojo, Arthur gently pinched his fingers, pressing the restless foo-foo back into his collar. He raised his eyes slightly, his sharp gaze penetrating the half-open wooden door, landing precisely on the uninvited figure. Finally here. The newcomer wore a high-grade purple snake-patterned long coat, and his dark red high ponytail was meticulously tied. He had 6 eyes, glinting with an inhuman, eerie light, and the katana at his waist, adorned with eyeballs, exuded a sinister aura. Arthur hadn't initially cared which Dayus was blocking his way, but the moment he clearly saw the person's appearance, his eyes dangerously narrowed. This appearance, are you Kokushibo? Arthur's voice was not loud, but it carried a hint of certainty. He had once glimpsed the legendary Yoriichi Tsugikuni in the secret records of the Ubuyashiki clan. Naturally, he had also heard of this twin brother, whose fate was intertwined with Yoriichi, and who later became Kokushibo. He created moon breathing, awakened his mark, then betrayed his master out of fear of death, killed his benefactor with his own hands, invited demons into the house, and finally transformed into a demon, holding the position of upper rank 1 for hundreds of years. On the other side, Kokushibo heard that almost forgotten name, and a subtle, imperceptible ripple passed through his 6 eyes, instantly returning to the still, dead calm of an ancient well. He slowly walked to the center of the dojo and stopped. After such a long time, someone still remembers that name. Even I myself have almost forgotten it. His voice was deep and devoid of any emotion. Arthur's lips curved into a cold, mocking arc. The past of betraying your master for glory probably isn't worth reminiscing about, is it? Before his words finished, killing intent arrived. Moon breathing, 5th form, moon spirit calamity. Kokushibo's body didn't move, his sword remained sheathed, yet crescent moon sword energy exploded from thin air, erupting suddenly with him at the center. Arthur did not retreat but advanced, his sword momentum like a raging sea. Water breathing, form of fury, raging scales. The sky full of moonlight crashed into the boundless deep sea, stirring up towering waves, and the chilling sword light rolled back. With one strike proving fruitless, a cold glint flashed in Kokushibo's 6 eyes, and he drew his sword with lightning speed. The sword light was like a black silk ribbon, using the 1st form to precisely block all counterattacking sword light. Arthur used the momentum to press forward, his platinum longsword and the eyeball-covered crying godslayer clashing fiercely, sparking blinding fireworks, and the clang of metal was deafening. So that's it, this is moon breathing, and you've also opened the transparent world, right? Arthur's tone carried a hint of understanding. Kokushibo remained silent, only feeling the force on his arm growing heavier with each wave, as weighty as a mountain. He immediately pushed off the ground, retreated rapidly, and at the same time twisted his wrist, raising his sword to counterattack. Moon breathing, 2nd form, pearl flower moon gazing. In an instant, countless high-speed slashes tore through the air, bringing with them more chilling moon blades, fanning out and shooting towards Arthur like a torrential downpour. Relying on his extraordinary perception and swift movements, Arthur weaved and dodged through the impenetrable gaps of the moonblades, his figure elusive. The ground beneath his feet, however, was torn apart by the invisible blade wind, leaving deep, bone-visible furrows. It must be said that Kokushibo's sword technique, infused with his blood demon art, was far more unpredictable and difficult to guard against than ordinary swordsmanship. Arthur not only had to be wary of the main body of the crying godslayer swung by the opponent, but also had to constantly pay attention to the chaotic moonblades that accompanied the slashes, with their erratic trajectories. Kokushibo himself, on the other hand, had no such concerns. Even if his body was occasionally cut by the moonblades, revealing crimson flesh, it regenerated instantly. Although it's not the first time I've seen it, I still want to say... Arthur suddenly stopped, his inverted platinum longsword humming. He suddenly exerted force with his feet, and the hard ground cracked in response, his entire being transforming into a white lightning bolt, shooting forward. The regeneration abilities of you demon things are too cheap. A powerful slash, carrying the might of 10,000 thunders, struck with the force of a giant beast swinging its tail. The crying godslayer in Kokushibo's hand instantly proliferated more twisted blades, counterattacking with full force. Moon-breathing, 8th form, moon dragon wheeltail. Boom! The two peerless, fierce weapons collided with a roar, and a terrifying shockwave spread wildly with the two as its center. The surrounding moon blades were all scattered, and at the same time, startling, spiderweb-like cracks were pressed into the ground. The strong wind howled, making their clothes flap noisily. Kokushibo's 6 eyes stared intently at the human opposite him, a cold light in them. Honestly, before this, he hadn't truly taken Arthur seriously, even knowing that the latter had slain Akaza and Gyoko. After all, he had awakened the transparent world, possessed a mark, and was further enhanced by the demon's powerful physique, far surpassing that of a human. How could he have anticipated that he would fight to a draw with a mere human? Just as Kokushibo's mind was shaken, and he was secretly filled with doubt, Arthur took a deep breath, carefully recalling each of the opponent's previous attacks. The aura around him, his breathing frequency, began to undergo subtle and profound changes. Dragon breathing, moon form, dark claw. In a daze, 5 extremely condensed, incomparably sharp, jet-black claw shadows appeared in Kokushibo's vision. They tore through the sky, descending from above, like a giant dragon extending its claw, intent on crushing the ant beneath its feet into dust. He was horrified, raising the crying godslayer with all his might to block, yet... Crack! Both man and sword shattered in response. Simulated celestial body, black hole. Before Kokushibo's shattered flesh could regenerate, a terrifying suction force, which made him tremble with fear, descended. A dark spell had already formed in Arthur's palm, instantly pressing him firmly to the ground. How is it? Are you satisfied with the feeling of losing to a style you yourself created? Arthur looked down from above, his voice cold. Kokushibo, struggling to writhe on the ground, his 6 demon eyes contracting violently from extreme pain and unwillingness. The look in his eyes towards Arthur finally contained genuine jealousy and hatred. To specifically replicate an enemy's moves to defeat them, what arrogance! He roared, his voice twisted and sharp. You too, he too, all of you so-called geniuses. You, who have never truly worked hard, how could you possibly understand the powerlessness and despair of never being able to reach your goal, no matter how desperately you train? Genius? Never worked hard? Arthur let out a low laugh, mixed with ice crystals, carrying endless mockery. Deep in his eyes, countless scenes soaked in blood and despair flashed. Icy, piercing gazes, endless experiments, blood-stained metal tables, and day after day, combat tests where he struggled on the brink of life and death. Don't think that a flimsy word like geniuses can encompass everything about me." The moment his words fell, he raised his hand to dispel the spell binding Kokushibo, and his body sank slightly. An indescribable, heart-palpitating, scorching energy began to wildly permeate the dojo. "Nani?" Kokushibo, who had just regenerated and struggled to get up, his face suddenly changed, his pupils shrinking to pinpricks. At this moment, the unforgettable figure was reflected in his eyes, and a wave of fear drowned him. The biological younger brother he had spent his entire life trying to catch up to, yet couldn't even match a fraction of. "You, who exactly are you?" Dragon breathing, sun form, crimson dragon. A ferocious giant dragon, constructed purely from flames, roared out, its mouth wide open, instantly devouring and chewing up the terrified Kokushibo. The massive dragon body tumbled wildly in midair, baring its fangs and claws, flapping its wings and wagging its tail, its roar shaking the heavens. The surrounding temperature climbed steadily, and the wooden structures and furnishings within the dojo spontaneously combusted without fire, flames spreading, and in a blink, it turned into a raging inferno. The giant dragon vibrated all over, its light dissipated, revealing Arthur's figure, his clothes fluttering, like a deity. To let you, the traitor who killed his master, die by Yoriichi Tsujikuni's style, can be considered putting an end to the centuries-long entanglement between you two brothers. Just as Arthur continued to advance deeper into the Infinity Castle, the Kasugai crows, who had been lurking in various parts of the battlefield, secretly observing all the battles, as if receiving a unified command, all flapped their wings and soared high, their hoarse cries piercing the sky. "Good news! Good news! Commander-in-Chief has slain Upper Rank 1. Commander-in-Chief has slain Upper Rank 1. The joyful news of the first victory spread like wildfire, instantly reaching the ears of the Demon Slayer Corps members still fighting valiantly. A gap was torn in the despairing gloom, and the light of hope illuminated their tired but resolute faces. Morale soared. One by one, the swordsmen's fighting spirit reignited, and they engaged the demons before them with greater caution and focus. Even the most troublesome Upper Rank 1 had already been slain by the commander. They were only responsible for Sayus, so how could they not even manage to delay for a short time? They absolutely could not lose. They absolutely could not die here. They must give their all and persevere. As long as they could hold on until the commander's final confrontation with Muzan Kibutsuji, it would be a complete victory for their Demon Slayer Corps, for all their sacrificed comrades. However, at the same time the good news spread across the battlefield. In the deepest part of the Infinity Castle, the crimson eyes that overlooked everything showed no ripples, only a chilling calm and a hint of amusement. "Oh, Kokushibo also died? How? Boring and useless." A halting yet magnetic deep voice echoed faintly in the empty, silent darkness, carrying a hint of imperceptible anticipation. Then, it's time for the real game to begin. 27. What is the value of astronomy? Chapter 27. What is the value of astronomy? A sudden change occurs. Inside Infinity Castle, all demons were under Muzan Kibutsuji's control. Therefore, the news of Kokushibo's death and the vision he saw in his dying moments, that swordsman's figure, as dazzling as the glorious sun, Muzan knew it all immediately. No! There's nothing to be afraid of. Muzan Kibutsuji slammed his hand on the armrest of his chair and stood up abruptly. His face was ashen, and he paced anxiously back and forth in the hall, frantically weighing the pros and cons in his mind. The blue spider lily is within reach. This might be my only chance in this life. No need to be wary. That guy is definitely not a monster like Yoriichi Sugikuni. The upper ranks will soon eliminate those ants in the Demon Slayer Corps. At that time, I will order Nakime to summon all demons here, How can a mere human contend with me? Then let's try the strength of a mere human, as you say. Thunder style, light fang. Heavenly light burst forth, thunderous power struck. Arthur, like a flash of lightning, severed Muzan Kibutsuji's neck with a single strike. While his head was regenerating, he transformed his left hand into a blade, swiftly piercing into the opponent's chest and abdomen, crushing the medicine bottle, and then rapidly retreated. Muzan Kibutsuji, who had just finished regenerating, immediately felt an abnormality within his body, and a sinister, cold smile spread across his lips. An utterly foolish idiot! You dare to try and poison me? He confidently began to decompose the toxins that had invaded his body, but to his horror, he found that the toxins had already spread throughout his body like maggots clinging to bone, and the speed of their spread was so fast that he had no time to react. This is? Arthur's lips curved slightly, and he explained with a smile. You should still remember Tamayo, right? This is a surprise gift package that she and I carefully prepared for you. Once you're poisoned with this, you can forget about splitting into pieces of flesh and escaping. Muzan Kibutsuji tried disbelievingly, and sure enough, his splitting ability was indeed firmly restrained. Being repeatedly outwitted by lower beings he considered ants, the already tyrannical and bloodthirsty Demon King became even more frenzied. He suddenly raised his head, his crimson eyes glaring fiercely at Arthur. It's so disgusting it makes me sick. Do you think you can defeat me with these despicable little tricks? A natural disaster, an earthquake, can easily take countless lives. Have you ever hated the sky, hated the earth? Why don't you just see me as a natural disaster? Why do you always use the banner of revenge, constantly talking about your parents and relatives being killed, endlessly bothering me? Arthur calmly watched the completely out of control Muzan Kibutsuji, toying with an intricately constructed metal ball between his fingers, his eyes filled with undisguised disdain. Caw! Not long after, the unique screech of a Kasugai crow sounded in Arthur's ears. This meant that the Demon Slayer Corps members had begun to sense his encounter with Muzan Kibutsuji. It also signified that the time had come. Natural disaster? Are you worthy? Arthur's smile grew wider, and he casually tossed the metal ball in his hand. Accompanied by a series of crisp, precise mechanical clicking sounds, a radiance truly comparable to the glorious sun suddenly bloomed. This was the natural enemy of demons, the sunlight that purifies all filth and evil. When the light of that artificial sun poured onto Muzan Kibutsuji, his skin immediately sizzled, emitting green smoke. The intense burning pain made him let out a shrill scream, and he turned to flee. Lightning flashed again. Arthur charged wildly with thunderous force, his platinum longsword thrusting furiously, pinning Muzan Kibutsuji firmly against the wall. Let go of me now. I don't want the blue spider lily anymore. I don't want it. Please, let go. Muzan Kibutsuji, his entire face deeply embedded in the wall, now cried out incessantly, his voice almost pleading. When the shadow of death truly enveloped his entire body, all thoughts of being the ultimate being, of eternal life, were completely cast aside. However, at this moment, screams no less shrill than his own began to echo madly in his mind. Those were the desperate wails of his subordinate demons, dying under the sunlight. The development of the situation had completely exceeded Muzan Kibutsuji's comprehension. His severely insufficient brain capacity was simply unable to process this cognition-subversioning scene. Arthur, who had been holding him back with the hilt of his sword, deduced from Muzan Kibutsuji's terrified and bewildered expression that the plan was proceeding smoothly, and he couldn't help but chuckle softly. The vitality of demons was indeed terrifyingly tenacious. Even if they were cut in half or dismembered, they could regenerate quickly, but when he learned that demons would turn to ash if exposed to sunlight, he almost laughed his head off. Not to mention that scientists in this era were already trying to simulate sunlight. For him, with his background in astrophysics, he only needed a few ordinary materials to refine a more convenient and efficient artificial sun. Afterward, to verify whether only real sunlight was effective against demons, or if any light with similar properties would suffice, Arthur specifically teamed up with Tamayo to conduct 2 experiments. The first was a simple blood sample exposure test. The second was a unlucky demon, casually captured during the day. If Muzan Kibutsuji had a habit of regularly checking the memories of his subordinates. If Muzan Kibutsuji had been a little more cautious in his daily life. If Muzan Kibutsuji. Unfortunately, there are no ifs in this world. That demon who died in daylight did not trigger any alarm in Muzan Kibutsuji. After all, it was occasionally possible for an idiot to accidentally get killed by the sun. Muzan Kibutsuji's deeply ingrained arrogance was undoubtedly his most fatal weakness. But it was precisely because of this that Arthur was able to truly grasp a trump card sufficient to secure victory. Fatal mistakes made in the early stages of war are impossible to compensate for, no matter what. Checkmate, Muzan. Arthur slightly turned his body so that the sunlight released by the metal ball could more evenly coat every inch of Muzan Kibutsuji's skin. The once invincible progenitor of demons was now rapidly decaying and dissipating, with clumps of ash-like embers fluttering down. Finally, only Arthur remained, along with a pile of dust. Arthur's gaze swept over the ashes on the ground, and he let out a long sigh, then looked down at Fufu, who was obediently curled up on his collar. Although the process of luring him was a bit tedious, the mission was finally completed successfully. It's been over 2 months since I updated my ability value, and now I suddenly want to see how Loki reacts. Fu-woo! The pure white beast and his own intuition simultaneously issued a piercing warning. Arthur, who had just relaxed, did not hesitate for a moment, his figure suddenly retreating rapidly into the distance. Bang! A long thorny whip made of flesh tore through the air, producing a thunderous boom. It carried a strange suction force, violently smashing the ground where he had just stood. Arthur lowered his arm, which had been blocking the flying debris, and gazed sharply at the opposite side, that resurrected, or rather, re-emerged, Muzan Kibutsuji. No! This guy was definitely not the previous Muzan Kibutsuji. Despite having an identical appearance, Arthur, who had activated the transparent world, couldn't sense the opponent's presence at all. Unable to sense, can only observe with the naked eye? The artificial sun is still operating, so it seems this guy only inherited Muzan Kibutsuji's abilities, but not his weakness to sunlight. I really hope the person who assigned the mission can be clearer next time. I almost capsized in the gutter because of it. At this moment, Arthur still had many unanswered questions, but this did not affect his ability to make the most correct judgment. Without a doubt, this Muzan Kibutsuji in front of him was his true mission objective for this trip. Zheng! The platinum longsword reappeared amidst the swirling light particles. Since leaving the dungeon, a long-lost smile of keen interest appeared on Arthur's face. I hope you can be a little more durable than that good-for-nothing Muzan Kibutsuji. 28. Listen to the red dragon's roar, starlight in your palm. Chapter 28. Listen to the red dragon's roar, starlight in the palm. Above the ruins of the collapsed Infinity Castle, Demon Slayer Corps swordsmen, fresh from their battle with the upper ranks, were tending to their gruesome wounds. Battle report, battle report. Muzan Kibutsuji has resurrected. The commander is fighting him alone. Muzan Kibutsuji has resurrected. The commander is fighting him alone. The Kasugai crow's sharp shriek pierced the sky, echoing through the twisted wreckage, delivering the news the Demon Slayer Corps least wanted to hear. Sanemi Shinazugawa fiercely tore open his blood-soaked uniform, roughly bandaging his new wounds, and let out a beast-like roar. Damn it, even the sun couldn't kill that monster? Uzui Tengen picked up a metal ball from the ground, which once shone brightly but was now considerably dim. He turned to the wind Hashira, who was struggling to get up, and shook his head, advising him. You've lost too much blood. If you move around like that, you'll die. Sanami Shinazugawa's veins bulged on his forehead as he retorted sharply. Are you telling me to just sit here and wait? Impossible. What disobedient fellow. Uzui Tengen clicked his tongue, took 2 steps forward, and pulled him up. The two supported each other, stumbling deeper into the battlefield. Kanroji Mitsuri gently placed Daki's lost hairpin next to the ashes of Gyutaro, whispering a final tenderness. If there's a next life, you must be a pair of carefree, good siblings. Obanai Iguro carefully identified the direction and said coldly, Mitsuri, let's go. The commander's situation is critical. Understood. Above the scorched earth, twisted giant trees were still burning. Kyojuro Rengoku clutched his bleeding abdomen, a pale smile on his lips, his breath shallow. My apologies, Tokito Muichiro. It seems my training is still far from complete. Tokito Muichiro wiped the sticky demon blood from his Nichiren blade, his expression as calm as ever. If you hadn't held him back, I wouldn't have been able to pinpoint his main body. Kyojuro, you are very strong. A hint of relief flashed in Kyojuro Rengoku's eyes. Thank you, the rest is up to you all. Tokito Muichiro nodded solemnly, his figure a blur as he sped off in the direction the Kasugai crow had warned. By the lotus pond, Kocho Shinobu sat slumped on the ground, her hollow eyes fixed on the pile of ashes that once belonged to her mortal enemy. Her tears had dried, leaving only a deathly silence. Jayome Himejima walked over, clasped his hands together, and spoke in a mournful voice. Namu Amida Butsu, Kane's spirit in heaven would never wish to see you like this. Tomioka Giyu stood to the side, his lips moving, but he ultimately said nothing. During his battle with Doma, his unintentional words had unexpectedly thrown the demon into disarray, making him furious. This made him vaguely realize that he might be bad at speaking. Grief did not completely consume Kocho Shinobu. She roughly wiped away the remaining tears from her eyes, forced herself to stand, and looked at her companions. Let's go. Arthur is waiting for us. So, was Arthur truly waiting for the Hashira's support at this moment? Boom! A violent tornado ripped through the earth, the ground, as fragile as a paper toy, easily torn away, revealing the two fiercely battling figures. Arthur held his platinum longsword upside down, the smile on his lips intensifying, his fighting spirit even more fervent than before. Muzan Kibutsuji was expressionless, several grotesque flesh-and-bone whips wildly flailing behind him, unleashing deadly torrents again and again. Dragon-breathing sun form, red dragon. Arthur transformed into a giant crimson dragon once more, his wings beating, soaring upwards, then plummeting down with the force of a thunderbolt. Muzan Kibutsuji's stinging whips had not yet retracted, his face still expressionless, blood vessels suddenly densely covering his crimson pupils, his counterattack arriving in an instant. Blood demon art, infinite impact. An invisible and immense shockwave, with him as its core, spread out violently. The Crimson Dragon's dive was abruptly halted. Within that shockwave were tearing lightning, violent hurricanes, and even a mysterious power that disturbed the mind, continuously eroding. One wave had not settled before another rose. Layer upon layer of shockwaves roared in, as if to crush heaven and earth into dust. As the smoke dispersed, the flames around Arthur vibrated and then retracted, leaving him standing steadily in the center of a massive circular crater. Not bad for stolen power. It's much stronger than the original. Too bad you only act on instinct. Have you even lost your most basic intellect? A creature even more bizarre than a demon, what exactly are you? Muzan Kibutsuji stiffly tilted his head, his gaze vacant, clearly having no intention of communicating with Arthur. Crack! The faint sound of crumbling stones reached Arthur's ears. The Hashiras, dragging their battered bodies, staggered forth, their gazes fixed on Muzan Kibutsuji. Is that Muzan Kibutsuji? Is all this surrounding devastation caused by him? What a terrifying monster. Commander, how are your injuries? Do they need to be treated first? Namu Amida Butsu, such demonic aura is horrifying. Don't come any closer. He's not someone you can handle. Stay where you are. Arthur shouted sharply, his eyes never leaving Muzan Kibutsuji's movements. The monster had only glanced at the Hashiras when they appeared, its ultimate target still Arthur. But we. No buts. Ubuyashiki isn't here, so I decide. The Hashira's expressions were conflicted, their tightened sword hilt slowly loosening, as it was truly agonizing for them to watch their comrade fight the progenitor of demons alone. Arthur, with his transparent world activated, saw their expressions clearly and couldn't help but chuckle in exasperation. Hey, what are those expressions? Do you think I'd lose to this kind of trash? He scoffed. Never mind, it doesn't look like I'll get any information out of him anyway, so let's end this. Invisible air. Besides using breathing technique to channel magical power to strengthen himself, Arthur, for the first time in a long while, used magic from the grace of God. Invisible currents of air furiously converged, terrifying wind pressure solidified layer by layer, and the platinum longsword in his hand gradually became invisible. A violent tornado suddenly formed around Arthur, tearing at the already broken earth. Countless shattered stones and broken wood were swept high into the sky. Muzan Kibutsuji seemed to sense extreme danger. His legs instantly exploded, extending more grotesque flesh and bone whips, shooting out from all directions. Dragon-breathing fusion, secret art roar of the red dragon. In an instant, high temperatures surged. Arthur perfectly merged magic and breathing technique, with wind fueling the fire and fire amplifying the wind's power. The already scorching crimson giant dragons surrounding heat waves suddenly climbed to a terrifying level. The next moment, the giant dragon raised its head and let out a dragon's roar that shook heaven and earth. A highly condensed, blue-white scorching breath was powerfully spewed forth. Where the breath passed, earth and stone melted, everything was charred black, and even space seemed to be scorched and twisted. The flesh and bone whips, which were capable of tearing through the air, turned to dust the moment they touched the breath. At the end of the torrent, Muzan Kibutsuji's figure was completely swallowed, unable to even let out a whimper before being annihilated in endless light and heat. Crack! In the dead silence, Arthur vaguely heard a crisp, strange sound, like shattering glass. Before he could investigate, a rice grain-sized starlight mark quietly appeared on his left palm, shining brightly and emitting a mysterious glow. Arthur's heart tightened at the sight. What is this? WWE 1, Muzan Kibutsuji, is dead? We won! We won! There will be no more demons in the world. Ha ha ha, Commander! What a truly flamboyant victory! Hearing the commotion, Arthur looked at the Hashiras, who were overjoyed and relieved to be alive, and quietly clenched his left fist. This mark, I'll put it aside for now. This is a time to savor the fruits of victory. 29. Let's drink our farewell wine. I wish you good luck in martial arts. End of Demon Slayer arc. Chapter 29. Drink the farewell wine. I wish you good luck in martial arts. End of Demon Slayer. Slayer Corps headquarters, the once solemn Ubuyashiki estate, was now completely engulfed by thunderous cheers and commotion. All members of the Demon Slayer Corps gathered here, some clinking glasses, others embracing and weeping. Arthur had just clinked glasses with a few team members who came to thank him when he caught sight of Tanjiro and his two companions approaching. On their youthful faces was a solemnity and reluctance unbefitting their age. "Mr. Arthur." Tanjiro's voice was full of energy. "Commander." Zenitsu followed closely, his attitude respectful. "Yo, boss!" Inosuke's unique voice was still loud. Arthur didn't pay too much attention to Inosuke's strange title, toying with his wine glass as he teased. "What? Are you here to toast like everyone else? You're not old enough to drink yet, are you?" Tanjiro looked at the juice in their hands with a slight embarrassment, scratching the back of his head as he explained, "Even though we can't drink yet, we all feel the same as everyone else in the Demon Slayer Corps." Arthur filled his glass, stood up, and clinked glasses with Tanjiro and his two companions one by one, nodding as he said, "All right, then you three can have a farewell drink with me." The boss is leaving?" Inosuke's shout was earth-shattering, instantly drowning out the bustling crowd. The previously joyful and harmonious atmosphere suddenly froze, and the air seemed to thicken. The pillars, who were more familiar with Arthur, exchanged meaningful glances, feeling a pang of sadness. They had almost forgotten that Arthur was not from Japan. His goal in coming here was to eliminate Muzan Kibutsuji. Now that the matter had been successfully resolved, it was indeed time to say goodbye. Bang! Sanemi Shinazugawa picked up a jar of sake and slammed it onto the table, his eyes not as fierce as before, but his mouth still curled into that arrogant, sinister grin. You wouldn't mind having a drink with us too, Commander?" Arthur stared at Sanemi Shinazugawa with amusement, also picking up a jar of sake from the table and tilting his chin, signaling for him to bring it on. Sigh, this unruly fellow is calling me commander for the first time. It seems I can't escape this round of drinks. Arthur mused inwardly, but he still underestimated Sanemi Shinazugawa's shamelessness. Seeing Arthur accept the challenge, he immediately turned his head and shouted to the back. "Hey, Uzui, Iguro, Kyojiro, Tokito, and you, Tomioka, all of you, get over here. It's time for a showdown." "Arthur?" Arthur looked at the pillars who quickly surrounded him, a wry smile on his face, and a hint of playfulness in his tone. "Are you ganging up on me because there are so many of you?" Sanemi Shinazugawa grinned. "So what if we are? We definitely can't beat you in a fight, so at least let us win one last round." Uzui Tengen raised a hand and flicked his hair. "Well, although this strategy isn't very flashy, you are the commander after all." Iguro Obanai said softly, "I'm not good at drinking. I just want to toast you a few more times." Kyoto Rengoku's fighting spirit was high. "Let's have a showdown, Mr. Arthur." Tokito Muichiro had already silently raised his cup. "I'll drink first. You do as you please." Tomioka Giyu, having accepted reality, was concise. "Cheers!" Just as the pillars surrounded Arthur, with the scent of sake filling the air, a towering, robust figure appeared behind them, his voice as steady as a mountain. "Namu Amida Butsu, count me in too." "Pillars?" Sanemi Shinazugawa stared at Gyomei Himejima, who had suddenly appeared from behind, and slapped his thigh, laughing heartily. "Really? Are you joining in the fun too? But do you drink?" Gyomei Himejima said nothing, but directly picked up a jar of sake and tilted his head back to drink. The sake dripped down his chin, his actions so bold that everyone was stunned. Sanemi Shinazugawa shouted excitedly, "Yosh! A reinforcement! Prepare yourself, Commander!" Arthur looked around at the faces before him, full of fighting spirit, yet also tinged with reluctance and respect, and a fearless smile played on his lips. Then tried to defeat me. In the distance, Kenroji Mitsuri watched the scene of everyone drinking heartily, her eyes sparkling with an unusual light. Indeed, the friendship between boys is also very cool. Kocho Shinobu shook her head helplessly. They all still have injuries, especially Mr. Shinazugawa and Mr. Rengoku. They are really too reckless. Then, she raised her hand to signal Kanao and the others to leave their seats and go prepare hangover tea, just in case these guys drank too much and something happened. After 3 rounds of drinks and 5 courses of food, when the commotion inside and outside the courtyard completely subsided, the night was cool like water. Arthur and Kagaya Ubuyashiki stood side by side on the Rainbow Bridge, holding warm hangover tea, conversing in low voices. I'm sure Sanemi and the others will be even more resentful when they wake up. Arthur chuckled. That's good. After all, regret is an indispensable part of life. Kagaya Ubuyashiki gazed at the babbling stream below the bridge, his voice for once revealing a hint of the confusion that came with shedding a heavy burden. The curse that plagued my clan for over 1,000 years has been lifted, and I actually feel a bit lost. Arthur finished his hangover tea and asked, looking sideways, You've fully recovered your health. Do you have any plans for what's next? Kagaya Ubuyashiki shook his head, then nodded slightly. As for future plans, of course, I have some. He paused, his voice calm but with a hint of determination. Before, some important figures died in the red light district, making the situation in this already unstable country even more difficult, so I plan to get involved and contribute my humble efforts. Arthur subtly observed Kagaya Ubuyashiki, thinking to himself. The leader of the Demon Slayer Corps choosing to enter politics. It seems I've created quite an extraordinary singularity. Isn't that wonderful? I believe you will become a good leader. Kagaya Ubuyashiki replied humbly, I wouldn't dare say that. I just don't want to waste this precious life. After they finished discussing that topic, an unspoken understanding spread through the air. Kagaya Ubuyashiki broke the silence first. Are you leaving now? Not waiting until tomorrow morning to formally say goodbye to everyone? Arthur waved his hand. No, thanks. I can't stand those tearful scenes. They're too mushy. I understand. Kagaya Ubuyashiki nodded slightly, his expression solemn. Then, I wish you good fortune in battle. Arthur returned a smile, and I wish you a smooth career. May we meet again. May we meet again. Afterward, Arthur, holding Fu, merged into the night and quietly left the world of Demon Slayer. The light gate dissipated, and Arthur composed himself, finding that he had returned to Loki's familiar living room. And speaking of the evil god's daily routine, it had never disappointed him. She was currently sprawled on the conference table, fast asleep, muttering incomprehensible perverted old man remarks. Arthur walked to the conference table and tapped the surface with his bent finger. Time to wake up. Loki, I'm back. Loki, who was sleeping soundly, was once again mercilessly woken up by Arthur. Just as she was about to vent her divine morning grumpiness, she suddenly realized who was standing in front of her. Didn't you just leave yesterday, you brat? Loki suddenly looked up, her sleepy eyes wide with shock. You're back so soon? Is the other world dangerous? Did you meet any pretty girls? Faced with Loki's barrage of questions, Arthur pushed away her approaching head with a look of distaste and replied, Calm down. It's because the time flow is different in the 2 worlds. I've been there for over 2 months. Loki sat up abruptly, her narrow eyes filled with disbelief, and she exclaimed in shock. The time flow difference is that great? Over 2 months? Then you little brat. She seemed to have thought of something, and her eyes suddenly became fervent. Arthur spread his hands helplessly. So please, hurry up and update my stats. Understood. Strip for this old lady. Arthur. Pendragon. LV2. Strength, I0, SSS, 2000. Endurance, I0, SSS, 2000. Dexterity, I0, SSS, 2000. Agility, I0, SSS, 2000. Magic, the first one, SSS, 2000. Miracle, IG. Magic. Wind of the King. Star Crystal. Skills. Symbol of the Red Dragon. Eternal Blessing of the Star Spirit. Brilliant Journey. Transparent World. 30. Bored Loki only wants to show off his European. Chapter 30. Bored. Loki only wants to show off his European. Loki didn't choose to imprint the ability values onto parchment, but simply recited them aloud. Arthur was already mentally prepared for his ability values to reach their limit. Otherwise, his meticulously created magic conduction breathing technique would have been in vain. However, it was indeed a surprise to him that transparent world could be recognized by the god's blessing and actively transform into identifiable divine script. Behind him, Loki's gaze swept over the description of transparent world, a satisfied expression on her face as she nodded in praise. Not bad, not bad. The application range of this skill is extremely wide. Even compared to our eyesight, it's not inferior, and in some aspects, it can even be said to surpass it. The praise from the goddess did not make Arthur feel smug. He simply shook his head calmly and explained, "That's because you actively sealed your divine power. Relying solely on your naked eyes, you naturally can't compare to the insight of transparent world." Loki, of course, knew this, but it didn't stop her from continuing to praise him. To achieve a realm almost like a god's vision, with a mortal body precisely demonstrated the astonishing potential hidden within Arthur. Now all your ability values have reached their limit, and your great feat experience is also full. It's time to choose your development abilities. Arthur waved his hand without turning his head. "I'm listening. Just tell me what development abilities are available this time." Loki pouted in dissatisfaction. She always felt that her desire to show off didn't get the expected response from this boy, but she still answered honestly. "There are 3 development abilities that appeared this time. Besides swordsman and magic conduction, which I mentioned last time, there's also harmony." Speaking of this, Loki's eyes scanned Arthur up and down with a strange look, clicking her tongue in wonder. "I really didn't see it coming. You actually have the talent to be a pharmacist? Could it be that you're good at concocting some mysterious little blue pills?" Arthur turned his head, his face full of black lines, to look at Loki, who was grinning, showing a somewhat perverted smile, her eyes carrying a hint of teasing and lewdness. "Don't lump me in with a good-for-nothing evil god like you. For development abilities, I'll choose swordsman. Get to work quickly." Seeing that Arthur completely ignored her joke, Loki could only droop her face and continue with the update work. Arthur, Pendragon. LV3. Strength, I0. Endurance, I0. Dexterity, I0. Agility, I0. Magic, I0 I1. Miracle, G. Swordsman, I. Magic. Wind of the King. Enchantment magic, ultra short aria. Envelops weapons with wind to increase attack power, accuracy, or releases wind pressure as a penetrating long-range attack. Aria, invisible air, Wind King hammer. Star crystal. permanent magic, can be activated at any time. Restriction release in progress. Greatly increases attack power, defense power, and recovery power. The strongest fantasy, a wisp of starlight. Skills. Symbol of the red dragon. Greatly increases magic resistance. Greatly increases conscious perception. Possesses the bloodline factor of the strongest fantasy species. Can generate endless magic just by breathing technique. Eternal blessing of the star spirit. Greatly increases external adaptability. Greatly increases personal luck. A blessing from the Earth Mother and the primates, praying that the holder never falls into disaster. Brilliant journey. Currently, 2 doors have been opened. Invites you to cross-dimensional doors, traversing the unknown in infinity. Transparent world. Perfect control, complete insight, fused with nature. When actively activated, greatly increases perception and gains extremely high correction for dexterity and agility. Loki deftly operated, just about to make an imprint when she found the numbers on it already starting to jump and change. She threw the needle back onto the table with a wry smile and looked at Arthur. I've decided. Next update, I'm going to have a speed contest with you. I refuse to believe I can't get a snapshot of your exact pre-upgrade stats. Arthur casually took the parchment with the outdated information, quickly scanned it, habitually folded it, and tucked it into his pocket. I can go to the dungeon later. Do you want to have breakfast together? Just drinking ale won't fill your stomach. Hearing this, Loki reached out to pat Arthur's shoulder with a pleased expression, but her movement froze mid-air. She wasn't tall enough. It's not easy. Finally, a child in the familia who knows how to care for me. But I have something important to tell you first. Arthur unhappily dodged Loki's alcohol-scented hand and retorted, just say what you need to say, don't get handsy. You smell too much of alcohol. I take back what I said earlier, you're not considerate at all. Loki shook her hand and asked in a seemingly casual but actually excited tone. When you registered your information at the guild before, did you only write your name and familia? Arthur nodded. That's right. Didn't you say just filling it out simply was fine? Loki chuckled twice, rubbing her hands like a fly, and explained. Ahem. Actually, according to the rules, new familia members also have to report their great feat and level to the guild. Before, well, I was trying to save trouble, thinking I'd wait for Finn and the others to come back and complete the information together, and incidentally, hehe. Arthur narrowed his eyes, looking down at Loki, who clearly had an ulterior motive, a knowing smirk playing on his lips. I see. So, the cunning evil god is planning to play some tricks in front of the gods again, to fool them? Seeing that Arthur instantly understood her intention, Loki's spirits lifted, and she excitedly clapped her hands. Exactly. What do you think? Isn't it interesting? Just thinking about it makes me excited. Although you're only LV.3 now, with your strength, if you say you're LV.6 or even LV.7, which blind god would dare to jump out and question it? Then, at the gods' assembly. Things might not be as simple as you think. Arthur promptly interrupted Loki's unrealistic fantasy. He wasn't like the goddess in front of him, who was in fun-seeking mode, willing to push herself into the limelight for temporary vanity and amusement. First-class adventurers in Orario are already few and far between. If an unfamiliar face like me suddenly appears with such a high level, those idle gods will definitely turn all their attention to me. I know you can block most prying eyes, but it's hard to guarantee that some overzealous god won't try to investigate regardless. You should calm down. Don't overdo it. Loki, who was immersed in the wonderful fantasy of showing off at the gods' assembly, her smile instantly froze, replaced by a resentful stare at this child who refused to cooperate with her mischief. Then what do you suggest? Should we really just honestly report LV.3? But your leveling speed. Didn't Brilliant Journey open another door? Even if we report LV.3, you'll soar up again in a short while, and the attention it draws then probably won't be small either. What Loki said made sense. Considering Arthur's abnormal promotion speed, no matter how they reported it, it might attract excessive attention from certain meddlesome gods. Arthur pondered for a moment and proposed a compromise. How about this? We'll publicly announce that I'm LV.4. As for the great feat, just make up some that fit that level. This way, even if I quickly rise to LV.5 later, it can be explained as having accumulated and settled for a long time at LV.4. It sounds more reasonable, and the commotion it causes will be much smaller. Loki's expression still showed that she wasn't satisfied enough, and she muttered softly. Alvenelia, who? For ordinary familias, an LV4 adventurer was already a pillar, capable of serving as a captain-level figure in medium to large familias. But for the wealthy Loki familia, LV4 was, only considered a promising rookie, still some distance from being a core executive. This level, while it could certainly be displayed at the gods' assembly, would definitely not satisfy Loki's mischievous desire to make a splash and blind the gods' dog eyes. Just as Loki was still agonizing over this not impressive enough level, a sudden commotion erupted outside the living room. They're back! The main force of the expedition is back! Accompanying this cheer were increasingly closer, chaotic, yet powerful footsteps. Clearly, the people who could bring Loki more fun, who could give her more confidence to show off at the gods' assembly, had returned. 31. The main players are back. Are the newcomers enjoying preferential treatment? Chapter 31. The main force returns. Newcomers enjoying preferential treatment? At the main entrance of Twilight Manor, the lingering warmth of the morning sun still hung in the air. Several lower-class adventurers on standby, all smiles, pulled open the heavy doors, welcoming the safe return of the expeditionary force. The first to catch the eye was an Amazon girl, dressed in a light dancer-like gauze, unreservedly showing off her healthy, wheat-colored skin. She rushed through the door like a gust of wind, her arms raised high, shouting joyfully. Yo-ho, we're back! I say, do you have to be so loud every time you come back? It's embarrassing. Another long-haired Amazon woman, with one hand on her hip, looked at her younger sister with a helpless expression. To their left was a slender, blonde girl in light azure attire. Although she remained expressionless, her exquisite beauty was even more striking than the golden yellow-haired elf beside her. A werewolf youth, hands in his pockets and wearing metal boots, stepped forward from the crowd. The lightning-shaped tattoo on his face seemed to come alive with his undisguised sneer. Always so noisy and boisterous, it's truly irritating. Shut up, you damn werewolf, it's not your place to lecture me. Ha, want to fight, you idiot Amazon? While the young men and women argued, the true three leaders of the Loki familia stood behind them, each with a different expression. The muscular dwarf warrior laughed heartily. Youth is truly wonderful, everyone is so full of energy. The calm-mannered Palom captain helplessly rubbed his forehead. Being energetic is good, but don't use it in such a place. The beautiful elf woman, with only one eye open, spoke faintly. Let them be, dealing with important matters comes first. At the same time, Arthur stood on the high-level corridor, looking down, taking in the figures of everyone at the main entrance. He had previously reviewed most of the information in the library, gaining a basic understanding of the Loki familia's main force, but this was indeed the first time he had seen them in person. The short-haired Amazon at the very front of the team was Tiona, LV5, a familia executive, with the title Great Destroyer. Her long-haired Amazon sister beside her, with a proud bust, was Tion, LV5, a Familia executive, with the title, Raging Serpent. The quiet, doll-like blonde girl beside the two was Ace, LV5, a Familia executive, with the title, Sword Princess. The golden yellow-haired elf accompanying Ace was Lafia, LV3, with the title, Thousand Elf. The werewolf youth with the lightning tattoo on his face and a crude tone was Bet, LV5, a Familia executive, with the title, Furious Wolf. The muscular dwarf warrior was Gareth, LVSIN, a Familia executive, with the title, Heavy Breaker. The beautiful elf woman was Riveria, LV6, the Familia's vice captain, with the title, 9 Witches. And the calm-mannered Palom captain was Finn, LV6, the Familia's captain, with the title, Brave. These individuals, with the exception of Lafia, Riveria's disciple, were all the first-tier main force of the Loki Familia. Raging Serpent, Furious Wolf, Brave, Loki. Where is she? Arthur suddenly remembered something, turned his head to look, but found that Loki had disappeared at some point. Bang! The main hall door was roughly pushed open, and Loki, like a whirlwind, her eyes gleaming, spread her arms wide and pounced towards the returning expedition members. I've missed you all so much. The female members, who had been either bickering or chatting, collectively frowned and simultaneously moved aside, precisely dodging her. Only the goddess, having missed her target, slid awkwardly a long way on the floor, leaving a clear friction mark. Spare us, Loki. The expedition was tiring enough. Seriously, we just finished with Tiona, and now Loki starts. Why is it like this? I'm not as disgusting as Loki. Indeed, if Loki catches you, the outcome will surely be terrible. Although it was unclear which female member uttered this sentiment, the statement received unanimous agreement from all female members present. After the female members collectively moved to a safe distance from Loki, Finn walked over to their deity and raised a hand in greeting. We're back, Loki. This expedition wasn't very smooth, but thankfully there were no casualties. I'll report the detailed situation to you later. For now, let's arrange for everyone to rest. Loki rubbed her red nose, her voice sounding a bit muffled. No problem, you can arrange it. Finn smiled, as was his custom, then turned and gave orders. The members on standby are responsible for moving luggage and spoils. The expeditionary force members should go bathe and rest first. After the executives have bathed, remember to come to the meeting room. Yes, Ein. The members responded one after another, busying themselves with their respective duties. Arthur was also among the standby personnel, so he leaped from the high-level corridor, landed steadily on the ground, and walked directly towards the bundles piled up by the expeditionary force. Seeing this, Loki quickly raised a hand to stop him. Kid, just let them do these chores. You might as well continue to shine in the dungeon. Arthur nodded compliantly. Then I'll be going. I'll definitely be back before dinner. Before he finished speaking, he strode off, walking directly out of Twilight Manor under the varied gazes of the crowd. Witnessing the brief but informative interaction between Loki and Arthur, the returning expedition members all looked puzzled, not understanding what their deity was up to. Tiona, always lively and outgoing, her eyes darting, pulled over a standby member and quietly asked, Hey, that silver-haired young man just joined the Familia, right? What's his name? What's his level? The member looked back at Arthur's disappearing figure, awkwardly scratched the back of his head, and quickly explained. Actually, we're not very clear either. Loki-sama personally brought him back about a week ago. But he always ventures into the dungeon alone, so we haven't had a chance to talk to him. Tiona released the member, letting him go move luggage, and then looked thoughtfully in the direction of the entrance where Arthur had long disappeared. An adventurer who goes alone? That sounds a bit familiar. Tyon looked up at the high-level corridor where Arthur had previously stood, and the ground, a look of admiration on her face. He generated almost no excess impact when landing. His physical abilities are quite excellent, and his control over his strength is terrifyingly precise. Bite, who had been leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, watching, snorted disdainfully and retorted. Even an LV2 nobody wouldn't be hurt jumping from that height. What's there to make a fuss about? Ace subtly glanced at Bate, a strange displeasure rising in her heart. She didn't like that kind of talk. For some reason, she felt a faint but strange sense of closeness from Arthur. But she should have no family left. Gareth stroked his steel wire-like rough beard on his chin, speaking with some concern. The habit of fighting alone isn't a good sign. I hope he's not another Bite. Riveria, however, shook her head in denial. It shouldn't come to that. Besides, didn't you see he was going to help move the luggage just now? Finn habitually licked his thumb. No stinging sensation came, and he smiled slightly. It shouldn't be anything bad. At least my thumb didn't warn me. Everyone is tired from the expedition. If there are any questions, let's discuss them in detail in the meeting room later. 32. Loki, who got what he wanted, gazes at the Dusk Pavilion. Chapter 32. Loki gets what he wants and gazes in front of the Dusk Pavilion. Inside the meeting room, the Familia executives, having washed away the dust of their journey, gathered. Finn sat at the desk, which was a bit too spacious for him, while the others were scattered casually. That's the general situation of the expedition. Because we encountered a cannon dragon, I made the decisive decision to return to the surface. Loki, with a drink always in her hand, listened to Finn's report, then sank lazily into the sofa, letting out a satisfied burp. Ugh, I get it. You all worked hard. Finn shook his head with a wry smile. Please take this seriously, Loki. Also, due to the losses from the failed expedition, the Familia will likely need to take on more adventure quests to make ends meet. Nani? Loki instantly sobered up upon hearing this, clutching her wine bottle and exclaiming in surprise. It can't be. They're not going to cut off my wine, are they? No, absolutely not that. Finn clasped his hands, resting his chin on them, his tone calm. Well, that depends on the situation. But please also consider the hard work of the Familia members, and buy fewer high-end wines. Loki felt as if struck by lightning, nodding with a heavy heart, but then a sly, eerie chuckle escaped her. Hehehe, if fine wine is out of the question, then I must seek comfort in the broad embrace of a big sister. Beat, completely uninterested in a god's antics, frowned and shouted sharply. Stop being disgusting. Instead of messing around here, why don't you quickly explain the current situation to us? Why does that small fry get special treatment? Saying this, Bates' tone suddenly shifted as he taunted. Could it be that you're finally interested in men? Loki's eyes widened in anger, and she slammed her hand on the table, rising to her feet. Who would like stinky men? Finn lightly coughed twice, accustomed to the scene, and raised a hand to soothe them. Calm down, Loki, and Bate too, watch your language. Bate folded his arms and scoffed coldly, leaning against the wall and saying no more. Loki casually tossed aside her wine bottle, pulling out 2 pieces of parchment from her pocket and shaking them. Her slightly tipsy face was full of boastful pride, like a gambler revealing a winning hand. Aren't you all curious why I'm treating that kid so well? Take a look at this, and it'll be clear. The Familia executives exchanged glances, an undercurrent of thoughts flowing. Is it really because of his ability scores? Is it powerful magic, or a rare skill? They hadn't expected that he would actually be willing to make his ability scores public. After all, ability scores are an adventurer's greatest secret. Normally, one can choose to keep them secret from everyone except their head god and Familia captain. But Arthur told Loki that if it was only to be revealed among the Familia executives, he didn't mind. Rather, he hoped that those who saw his ability scores wouldn't fall into self-doubt because of them. Loki first handed the 2 pieces of parchment to Captain Finn, which respectively recorded Arthur's information from his previous 2 promotions. The usually steady Palam's pupils suddenly contracted the moment he saw the ability scores. He checked repeatedly, his face full of disbelief, eventually covering his forehead and chuckling softly. Is this the possibility that the gods have been yearning for? He truly is a unique existence. Saying this, he tossed the parchment onto his desk, gesturing for everyone to come forward and look. The executives, degrees and SSS, what is this? 2,000 magic points? Even the lowest endurance already surpasses this old man. This. You all need to look further down. The silver-haired kid's magic and skills are all super boost. Is this the standard for a small fry? Something must be wrong. Loki, what exactly is this? Aias's gaze was drawn as if by a magnet, fixed intently on the 2 pieces of parchment, her knuckles slightly white from clenching too hard. Although the crucial information about the brilliant journey was hidden, still, this kind of power, transcending limits and cognition, was precisely what she had always yearned for. Yet, at this moment, she could only glimpse it in someone else. In contrast, Loki, who had finally gotten her wish and was showing off, grinned slyly, adding fuel to the fire as if enjoying the spectacle. You're surprised by this? Then do you remember when he joined our Familia? Everyone was startled by her words, not understanding why Loki would say such a thing. According to the members who stayed behind, Arthur had only joined the Familia a little over a week ago, but what of it? Among them, some hadn't thought deeply, while others dared not to. Simply because that possibility was too challenging to common sense. Finn took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. He looked at the gleeful, almost dancing evil god, and asked in a deep voice. Before receiving your blessing, Arthur, had he joined any other Familia? Hey, Finn, that's taking the joke too far. Is that true or false? So that means 1 week, at most 10 days. Everyone's eyes were burning, all looking at Loki, their hearts a mix of emotions. They both hoped she would deny Finn's guess and wished that their Familia truly had a heaven-sent genius. Loki's eyes narrowed into crescent moons, and she slowly nodded, confirming the guess, sending huge waves crashing in everyone's hearts. As night fell, Arthur walked through the bustling market, carrying a thick money pouch exchanged from the guild. The crisp sound of coins clinking drew frequent glances from surrounding adventurers. He carried no weapon, wore no armor, and didn't even have the backpack typically used by supporters. How exactly did this guy earn so many Valis? 2 adventurers from the Soma Familia peered around, licked their dry lips, exchanged a look, and then planned to discreetly follow him. Unexpectedly, 3 seniors from the same Familia quickly grabbed their shoulders, warning them in a low voice. Don't go looking for death. That guy is from the Loki Familia. He only needs 1 punch to take down an LVTO-22. Ah, this. The 2 shrank their necks, looked at each other, and quickly abandoned their ill intentions. Thank you, seniors, for the warning. I didn't expect you to be so well informed. Impressive. It's just a little experience from those who've been through it, nothing to mention. Further down the street, Arthur took a freshly fried potato ball, grabbed a handful of Valis from his money pouch, placed it on the stall, waved his hand, and turned to leave. No need for change. Really? Thank you for your patronage. Please come again. Arthur carefully fed Fufu, and hearing the cheers of the young female stall worker behind him, he couldn't help but chuckle. It's a big world, full of wonders. He truly hadn't expected that even a god could be so down and out. There's no difference in quality among divine blessings, so diligently recruiting familia members is surely better than setting up a street stall, right? Or is it? This is a peculiar habit, unique to a god. Lost in thought, Arthur's steps didn't falter, and he successfully returned to Twilight Manor before dinner. Just as he was about to go back to his room to put away his money pouch, he saw a slender figure standing silently at the main entrance. At the same time, a gaze filled with intense obsession had locked onto him. 33. A showdown of winds. Ayesi's unique train of thought. Chapter 33. The Duel of Winds. Ayesi's unique thoughts. Twilight quietly descended. On the increasingly sparse streets, Arthur stood outside the main gate, his gaze a little puzzled as it fell upon Ace, who was blocking his path. They had only met once and had never even spoken. Why was she waiting for him here specifically? Hello, is there something I can help you with? Ace's delicate brows furrowed slightly, and a hint of distress appeared on her largely expressionless face. She seemed to still be deliberating her words. A nearby window quietly opened, and the executives inside the manor held their breath, observing the interaction between the two below. Why did we let Ace meet the silver-haired guy alone? I'm a little worried. How will Ace, with her personality, even start the conversation? Let's just watch for now. Even Bay didn't come out to stop it, so it seems this particular stimulus was indeed significant enough. I actually hope Bate can rein in his temper a bit because of this. It's exhausting having to mediate conflicts every time. The night breeze swept by, bringing a slight chill. The two remained silent, looking at each other. Arthur was not interested in this kind of time-wasting stalemate, and shrugged. If there's nothing, I'm going in. It's almost dinner time. Wait, please wait. Aya suddenly reached out and grabbed the hem of Arthur's magical attire. Her pure amber gold eyes looked directly into Arthur's, her voice soft yet firm. What do I have to do to become like you? Arthur raised an eyebrow. Like me? The girl in front of him had a placid expression, like a delicate porcelain doll, and her words didn't explicitly state her meaning. However, Arthur clearly caught a nearly obsessive longing in her pure eyes. This girl wants to get stronger? It's probably Loki's doing behind the scenes again. With intuition far exceeding ordinary people, Arthur had already roughly outlined the situation in his mind and spoke casually. Actually, you don't want to become like me. You just purely desire power, right? Upon hearing this, Aya's eyes suddenly brightened, and she nodded repeatedly like a startled deer, indicating her agreement. Seeing her frank admission, Arthur's expression relaxed, and he suggested, "Then you should come with me first." As his voice fell, he turned and strode towards Twilight Manor. Seeing this, Ayes followed without the slightest hesitation, immediately stepping forward. Training ground. This place was specially designed for Familia members to adapt to their ability values and hone their skills. In addition to a complete set of basic training facilities, a large open space for practical sparring was also created in the center of the field. Ayes tilted her head, a trace of confusion in her clear eyes as she looked at Arthur, who was warming up his wrists not far away. Why do you want to spar with me? You can see it as a necessary preparation before getting stronger. Arthur raised his hand, and his platinum longsword appeared. The blade shimmered with a cold luster in the faint light. He looked at Aias, who still seemed to lack the will to fight, and continued to explain. I am filled with curiosity about the depths of the dungeon, and have always yearned to explore more distant places. However, the time spent traveling back and forth to the dungeon each day is limited, and adventuring alone is too boring. So I need some companions who can fight alongside me. Come at me. Let me see your strength. After hearing Arthur's explanation, Aias immediately displayed her unusual and unique way of thinking. Wanting to go deeper into the dungeon means desiring adventure and becoming stronger. Expeditions require companions, which means needing to fight alongside each other and overcome difficulties together. Wanting to see her strength means a qualification test. As long as she passes the test, she can obtain the method to become stronger from him. Logical and clear-headed. What the heck? After a series of deductions that ordinary people would find hard to understand were completed in her mind, Aias's eyes suddenly changed, and her palm pressed against the despair sword at her waist. Please be careful. Before her voice even fell, Aias moved. Her speed was as swift as a hunting leopard. With a flash of her sword, she was already close to Arthur. Clang! The platinum longsword and the silver-white saber clashed violently, the sparks tearing through the night and reflecting the two's vastly different expressions. Arthur's expression was calm, while Aias's face showed surprise and doubt. She knew Arthur's strength was considerable from his status board, so although that strike just now didn't use magic, it still poured in 70% of her power. Logically speaking, let alone a level 3 adventurer, even a level 4 would find it extremely difficult to block so easily. Arthur's wrist sank slightly, his sword pressed back, and a relaxed, comfortable smile played on his lips. What a headache, you still chose to hold back. Strength was not Aias's forte, and she didn't linger in the fight, immediately retreating swiftly. Then she changed the angle of her sword and launched a continuous series of slashes from another direction. Under the night sky, the clang of metal against metal was incessant, and the sparks that flew were like fireflies dancing in the dark, fantastical and dangerous. In an instant, the two had already exchanged dozens of blows. However, Aias was always unable to break through Arthur's seemingly casual, but in fact impenetrable, sword defense. You should let go of your reservations now, shouldn't you? As fellow swordsman who wield the wind, I have quite high expectations for you. Invisible air! Arthur forced Aias back with a heavy slash. Invisible currents of wind appeared out of thin air, quickly coiling around the platinum longsword, condensing into a thick, visible wind pressure. Aias recalled the ability value panel she had glimpsed earlier, a flash of light in her eyes, and she chanted softly. Awaken Tempest. The short, powerful incantation echoed through the training ground. The wind elemental particles slumbering in the atmosphere seemed to receive a supreme decree, surging forward in a rush. The originally formless and invisible gale was now incredibly docile. Azure currents of air swirled around her, blowing her dazzling golden hair, forming a magnificent picture too beautiful for a battle. Oh? Arthur stared intently at the wind swirling around Aias. A strange feeling arose within him. This wind was not being forcibly controlled by her. It was more like actively responding to her call. That's certainly interesting. Then it's my turn to attack. Bang! Arthur's foot stomped a spiderweb-like crack into the training ground's floor. He was enveloped in a visible gale, charging forward with an almost brutal momentum. After the brief skirmish just now, Aias already knew that Arthur's strength was definitely not below hers. She dared not be negligent, gripping her sword hilt tightly, and met his attack with full force. The furious roar of the wind instantly drowned out the sharp clang of weapons. Streaks of fierce sword chi crisscrossed, leaving deep marks on the surrounding training facilities. Witnessing this scene, the executives observing in secret all gasped. Although we were mentally prepared, how can a level 3 adventurer fight to this extent against S, who is fully unleashing her wind? I say, shouldn't we stop those two first? Captain? Wait a little longer. Don't worry, we're watching. Center of the training ground. The two, fighting fiercely with the wind, suddenly separated, each steadying their stance, facing each other from a distance. Arthur showed a satisfied smile and nodded gently. As expected of Aurario's rumored strongest level 5. This power is extraordinary. Aya's breathing was slightly ragged. Hearing this, she looked up in surprise and asked eagerly, "Then, can you tell me the way to become stronger?" Of course, but rather than just telling you, I prefer to let you experience it firsthand. That way, the impression will be even deeper. As soon as his voice fell, Arthur's posture suddenly lowered a bit. His originally steady breathing frequency underwent subtle and rapid changes at this moment, and the surrounding wind sounds also became sharper and more piercing. Wind breathing, 8th form, primary violent wind, / Arthur suddenly twisted his body and lunged forward. The gale enveloping his longsword instantly transformed into a high-speed rotating tornado, tearing through the air. He surged forward with a destructive wave of air, at a speed far exceeding before. Wind blades filled the sky, sweeping down like a deluge. Aya's pupils contracted sharply. Without time for much thought, she almost instinctively poured all her strength into the tip of her sword, and thrust forward violently. Sweep Tempest. The incantation representing the maximum release of Wind Spirit's dash escaped her lips. In an instant, the azure current of air enveloping her suddenly exploded, transforming into a violent hurricane, boldly meeting the deadly tornado rushing towards her. Two destructive storms were about to collide. Victory or defeat in this one strike. 34. Buy it. Even if it costs you nothing, you have to buy it. Chapter 34. Buy it. I have to buy it even if it means selling everything I have. Boom! A powerful wave of air suddenly exploded, sweeping in all directions, cracking the training ground's floor tiles and sending dust swirling everywhere. The previously neat exercise equipment was scattered, and the scene was a mess. Aya's gaze pierced through the swirling dust, locking firmly onto the silver-haired young man not far away, who still had a faint smile on his lips, her eyes burning bright. What was that just now? As a fellow wind magic conduction swordsman, Aya's keenly noticed that Arthur's strike just now was completely different from the magic he had previously displayed. It wasn't a pre-existing magic skill, but rather a special technique that directly manipulated the surrounding elements, using his own magic conduction? Arthur smiled. It's a special training method. Do you want to learn it? I want to learn. I want to learn. After I learn it, can I also use wind like Ace? Tiona, who should have been observing from the side, couldn't hold back. She rushed to Arthur in a whirlwind, grabbed his arm and peppered him with questions. Young Arthur, what you used just now wasn't magic, right? Is it hard to learn? Can it be used with dual blades? Arthur tried to subtly pull his arm free but found her holding on tightly, so he could only respond to her enthusiasm first. Calm down, so many questions. I have to take them one by one. Really, apologize quickly, Tiona. How can you casually inquire about such a secret technique? Tiona quickly stepped forward and pulled her overly excited sister away. With his arm freed, Arthur glanced at the executives who had gathered around the training ground at some point, a knowing smile playing on his lips. As expected, they're all here. Finn, with a benevolent smile on his face, spoke on behalf of everyone. After all, you are an unprecedented super rookie. It's only natural for everyone to be curious. Or perhaps you're not good at dealing with large crowds. Arthur shook his head calmly. He did prefer quiet, but he wasn't averse to lively situations either. Afterward, the executives formally greeted him and exchanged names. Even Bate, who was usually unruly, now reined in his fangs and looked focused, clearly acknowledging the power Arthur displayed. Only then did everyone realize that Arthur was not as reclusive as the garrison members had described. For a moment, expressions of relaxed joy appeared on the executives' faces. The Loki familia was a large group after all. If another lone wolf were added to the executives, managing them would be a real headache. After a brief greeting, Finn cut to the chase, asking the biggest question on everyone's mind. "So, what exactly was that you used just now?" Arthur calmly explained. Simply put, it's the breathing technique of magic conduction. Initially, it was a training method that relied on inhaling large amounts of oxygen to strengthen cardiopulmonary function, thereby improving physical fitness. Later, I modified it to allow my own magic conduction to participate, thereby fully stimulating the body's potential and achieving strengthening effects. The breathing technique of magic conduction? The executive savored this unfamiliar term, finding Arthur's unheard-of training method incredible. There had always been a consensus among adventurers. Magic conduction was fundamentally different from the other 4 basic abilities: strength, endurance, dexterity, agility. Improving attributes like strength and endurance required rigorous physical training and tapping into the body's potential. Magic conduction, on the other hand, was condensed from spiritual energy and could only be improved by adventurers who mastered magic. But the breathing technique created by Arthur took a completely different path. With each breath, it first stimulated the physique with magic conduction, then used magic conduction to amplify other ability values, ultimately achieving a comprehensive strengthening of bodily functions. In this way, when operating the breathing technique, all 5 basic items in the ability values could be trained simultaneously. Among the executives, Riveria, with the deepest magic conduction attainment, was the first to grasp its mystery and couldn't help but exclaim, "A genius concept. The key factor affecting ability value improvement has instead become magic conduction?" For adventurers with higher magic conduction values, the improvement in ability values achieved through this method is even more significant. Even if the short-term effects may not be obvious, given time, it will certainly make up for the weakness of mage-type adventurers' physiques. That being said, the magic conduction breathing technique was more of a bonus for other adventurers. After all, not everyone possessed a powerful magic conduction core like him, capable of continuously supplying magic conduction. At this thought, Arthur casually waved his hand. "You flatter me. My own magic conduction is quite outstanding, so naturally, I focused on this direction when making improvements." After speaking, he looked at the beautiful emerald-haired elf with a hint of inquiry. For some reason, Arthur always felt that Riveria's voice had a peculiar familiarity, as if they had known each other for many years. On the other side, the other executives, after hearing the explanation of the breathing technique, all turned their gazes to Tiona. The latter was pointing at herself pitifully, her innocent big eyes quickly welling up with tears. Wah. Tiona, OT Omega. T.O. Arthur looked at the tearful Tiona with some confusion, vaguely guessing why she was like this. Tyone gently stroked her sister's head, and Aias, uncharacteristically, patted her back in comfort. Even Bet, who usually had the foulest mouth, wisely kept quiet at this moment. In fairness, Bate had always disliked his magic talent, and had never considered increasing his magic conduction value. But a clear opportunity to become stronger was right in front of him, yet he missed it because he lacked magic talent and couldn't condense enough magic conduction. If he himself encountered such a thing, he would probably sell everything he owned to get a grimoire. Of course, Bate wasn't the only one who thought of a grimoire. Riveria looked at the thoughtful Finn and suggested, "How about we buy Tiona a grimoire?" At these words, Arthur's guess was confirmed. Tiona, indeed, couldn't use magic. This world was very different from his original world. Aside from the elf race, who were born with the ability to control magic, whether others could wield mysterious power depended entirely on whether the divine blessing awakened a magic slot. Magic, surprisingly, became a prerequisite for condensing magic conduction. However, adventurers who could awaken magic were already rare. Even a strong individual like Tiona, already a level 5 first-class adventurer, didn't even have one magic. To address this situation, grimoires came into being. They were rare magic conduction tools that only mages who had simultaneously acquired both the mystery and magic conduction development abilities could create. Their core function was to forcibly awaken magic in adventurers. Even those who had never awakened magic could, by reading a grimoire, open that mysterious magic slot. Precisely because of its powerful, fate-altering effect, every grimoire was priced exorbitantly, often with a price, but no supply. Finn pondered for a moment, then looked up at the tearful Tiona, a helpless, light smile playing on his lips. "I will ask Loki to gather information about grimoires, but Tiona, you also need to be mentally prepared." Tiona quickly wiped away her tears, eagerly asking, "Prepared for what?" Bate twitched his lips, his tone carrying a hint of mockery. "Idiot Amazon, what else could it be? Of course, it's preparing money." Finn nodded. The market price for grimoires has long exceeded 100 million valis, and high-grade grimoires that can awaken a magic slot will only be more expensive. The Familia can advance you this sum, but you will need to find a way to repay it as soon as possible. No problem, Tiona? Of course. I'll work even harder to earn money. Tiona instantly brightened up, a brilliant smile blooming on her face, already fantasizing about how she would be after learning magic. Aes, who had been waiting silently nearby, gently tugged on Arthur's sleeve, her clear, amber-like golden eyes full of anticipation and longing. "When can you teach me the magic conduction breathing technique?" Arthur met Aes's gaze, clearly catching the almost burning eagerness and obsession within them. "This girl is quite similar to my past self." His heart stirred slightly, his eyes filled with nostalgia. Dong! The bell at the top of the Twilight Manor echoed melodiously, reminding everyone that dinner time had arrived. "Let's eat first," Arthur suggested in a calm tone, as if arranging daily chores. "Training will officially begin tomorrow morning. I hope you are ready." 35. The Elven royal family makes an exception? Amazon's passion. Chapter 35. The Elf royal family makes an exception? The passion of the Amazons. The next morning, on the training ground, the mess from yesterday's fierce battle had been cleaned up and looked brand new by the diligent Familia members. Arthur's gaze swept over the resolute faces, but he did not find Tiona and Tione among the executives. Finn spread his hands, a knowing smile on his lips. Loki wasn't idle last night. She was busy all night and finally managed to get Tiona a high-level magic conduction book. Now Tiona is busy awakening her magic, and Tione is guarding her. Arthur nodded understandingly, then turned to the crowd and began to explain in detail the key points of practicing the breathing technique. First, everyone's magic affinity varies greatly, so the breathing technique that perfectly suits each of you will naturally be different. Second, this is your first time encountering the breathing technique, and the introductory stage is crucial. I will personally guide you from the side, ensuring you are on the right path. It can be said to be hands-on teaching. Please wait a moment. Riveria's clear voice rang out, a subtle hint of emotion crossing her delicate face. Could you please explain what hands-on teaching specifically refers to? Arthur's reply was calm. It's nothing more than helping you correct subtle errors in your breathing. For females, a light touch with a fingertip on a specific spot on their back is enough to guide them. The magic breathing technique, compared to the ancient breathing technique passed down by the Demon Slayer Corps, is vastly different in its difficulty to master. Beginners must constantly focus on the coordination of breathing and magic in the initial stages, without the slightest carelessness. Otherwise, it is extremely easy to trigger a magic backlash, which can cause minor internal organ damage or, in severe cases, the possibility of an explosion. And Arthur, possessing the transparent world, can accurately perceive the subtle changes in everyone's state during practice, giving him full confidence to provide guidance with ease. As for the little secret that the transparent world can see through the human body, he decided to bury it deep in his heart forever, never to reveal it. Upon hearing this, Riveria's delicate brows furrowed almost imperceptibly, clearly finding the need for physical contact difficult, and she couldn't help but hesitate. As elves born flawless and of noble blood, a kind of fastidiousness that ordinary people could not understand was etched into their bones. This fastidiousness was not only reflected in the impeccable cleanliness of their daily lives, but also deeply imprinted on their way of interacting with the outside world. Elves only allowed beings they truly recognized from the depths of their souls to touch their bodies. Besides that, even an untimely touch from a god would be regarded as desecration and offense. After some thought, Riveria finally decided to address the matter directly. Otherwise, if the other party was offering such a powerful secret technique that could elevate one to a higher level out of good intentions, but she resisted it due to instinctive aversion, such a scene would only lead to awkwardness and unpleasantness for both sides. Sorry, Is it because of the elves' almost stubborn fastidiousness? Arthur seemed to have already seen through her thoughts, yet he showed no sign of minding at all. If one were to inquire about the reason? Because his intuition was clearly conveying this message to him. Riveria would never reject his touch. Arthur calmly took 2 steps forward and stood in front of Riveria. His deep eyes still held the same faint smile as always, and he extended his long, powerful hand with distinct knuckles. Why not try it yourself? See if your fastidiousness truly rejects me? At this moment, Bate, who had been silently observing, unconsciously lowered his folded arms, secretly clicked his tongue, and his eyes were complex. Meanwhile, the more experienced Finn and Gareth exchanged a knowing look, a meaningful, mischievous smile playing on their lips. Only the innocent Aes tilted her head in confusion, showing some incomprehension at Riveria's current hesitation. Then the noble elven royalty took a deep breath, as if making a momentous decision, and tentatively extended her slender fair hand, gently grasping Arthur's outstretched palm. The moment their palms clasped, the expected repulsion and discomfort did not appear. Everything was as calm as usual. Riveria's beautiful eyes were full of surprise, and she suddenly looked up at Arthur, a tumultuous wave rising in her heart. But, we've known each other for such a short time. Why is this happening? Arthur's fingertip exerted a slight pressure, raising their clasped hands to their eyes, a reassuring smile on his lips. In any case, this isn't a bad thing, is it? Now, we can officially begin our training, right? Riveria then came to her senses, a blush quietly creeping up her cheeks. She somewhat flusteredly withdrew her hand, unnaturally tidied the stray hairs around her ears, and feigned composure to change the subject. Speaking of which, Tiona and Tiono, why have they been gone so long and still haven't returned? Who's thinking of me? Is it Riveria? A spirited shout came from far away and grew closer. Tiona, holding up a yellowed parchment, ran over like a fawn in the forest. With a nimble leap, she directly jumped onto Arthur's back, rubbing against him affectionately. Look, I finally have my own magic now. Arthur was caught off guard by this sudden attack and quickly reached out to steady the overly excited Amazon girl on his back, a hint of helplessness in his tone. Yes, I'll look now, but first, please, get off me. Oh! Tiona Shiryut. LV.5. Strength, a 889. Endurance, a 867. Dexterity, B 778. Agility, A 801. Magic, I 0. Punch, G. Diving, G. Abnormal resistance, H. Break, I. Magic. Passion poem. Reinforcement magic, activated during battle. Increases strength and endurance. The degree of increase continuously rises with battle duration. High bonus when fighting alongside a recognized hero. Skills. Frenzied Rage. Attack power increases each time damage is taken. Great Battle. All ability values receive a high bonus when near death. Arthur's gaze quickly scanned every word on the parchment, understanding everything. This passion poem, as reinforcement magic activated during battle, combined with Tiona's own Frenzied Rage and Great Battle, two highly explosive skills, would undoubtedly significantly enhance her ability to turn the tide in adverse battle situations and her resilience for sustained combat. Although its amplification might not be comparable to top-tier enchantment magic known for extreme buffs, it could definitely be considered a very practical type of magic. Moreover, the core of practicing the breathing technique lies in being able to condense and control one's own magic, so there was no strict requirement for what type of magic Tiona ultimately awakened. Subsequently, perhaps because Arthur's earlier public display of his ability values among the executives set a somewhat unideal precedent, Tiona was now also beaming with excitement, unreservedly passing the parchment in her hand among everyone, seemingly having completely lost any concept of keeping ability values secret. Cough. Arthur let out a slightly helpless dry cough, clapped his hands to regain everyone's attention, and explained in a clear voice. All right, idle chatter is over for now. Next, I will individually confirm which breathing technique is most suitable for each of you. So, who wants to be the first to try? Me, ein too. Aes and Tiona shouted almost simultaneously. Then, their eyes met, and Tiona was the first to casually scratch the back of her head, laughing heartily. Since that's the case, let Aes go first. The doll princess, who yearned for power and was focused on revenge, did not hesitate at all. With firm steps, she walked directly to Arthur and stood in front of him. She neatly raised her hand, sweeping the soft golden hair from the back of her neck to the front. This revealed her form-fitting combat skirt armor, which accentuated her graceful curves and also fully exposed her smooth, flawless, slender back, devoid of any excess flesh, to Arthur's eyes. Arthur's expression remained normal. For him, who had already activated his transparent world vision, a mere girl's back could not stir his mind in the slightest. Soon, the breathing technique style most suitable for Aes was confirmed. Just as expected, it was the swift and agile wind breathing. And the suitable breathing techniques for the others were also determined. Finn, thunder breathing. Gareth, stone breathing. Riveria, water breathing. Bait, moon breathing. Tyone, flame breathing. Tiona, flame breathing. Arthur personally guided each person through the basic introduction of combining breathing and magic. Except for Riveria, whose delicate body remained slightly tense, everyone else immersed themselves in this novel training with great enthusiasm. Perhaps because the formidable physique of LV-5 adventurers was already far superior to that of ordinary humans, the executives rarely made mistakes in mastering the breathing technique, progressing at an astonishing speed. Especially Ace and Riveria, whose magic values were already the highest among everyone. Under Arthur's guidance, sparkling magic particles, like fireflies, had already begun to dance around their bodies, looking quite beautiful. Cough, cough. The overly eager Ace unconsciously quickened her breathing, trying to accumulate magic faster, but accidentally caused internal injury, and a trickle of striking fresh blood overflow out from the corner of her mouth. She quickly raised her hand, somewhat flustered, to wipe away the blood. However, this subtle scene was still keenly noticed by Riveria, who stood nearby. Her delicate brows furrowed slightly, and she reprimanded with a hint of uncharacteristic sternness in her tone. Ace, you cannot act recklessly on your impulses, especially when trying a completely new training method you've never encountered before. You should be even more cautious. Ace pursed her lips somewhat aggrievedly, and retorted in a low voice. But I. Riveria's expression was serious, allowing no room for argument. No buts. Arthur glanced at the two squabbling individuals, and timely interjected a reminder. Riveria is right, you really shouldn't rush things. After all, what you are doing now is just the first step of a long journey. Subsequently, you will need to maintain this breathing frequency 24 hours a day, constantly, to truly meet the introductory standard. 24 hours? Bete, who had just barely grasped a glimmer of the moon breathing under Arthur's guidance, subconsciously clutched his still faintly aching chest, a look of solemnity and horror flashing in his eyes. This guy, he really is a complete monster, such a demand. His heart was bitter, his understanding of Arthur deepened, and at the same time he felt an unprecedented pressure. To be continued. Thank you all for watching.